Hello, David here. I just got finished was just looking at the article about this guy that I guess this guy I mean, I barely heard about it. I just bumped into the article today. So I kind of disconnect from news and everything, but what's this guy's motive? I mean, I'm just going to try to put my mind in his mind, because I'm about the same age as this guy. You know, what's the motive? Let me see if I can get inside this guy's head without, I don't know anything about him. But since I'm about the same age, he's 63, I'm 62, well, so let me just get in the age of somebody of this mindset. I'm just going to take a guess at it. I would say this is a person, you know, when you reach my age, you know, your hopes and dreams have died. I mean, they can die, you know. It can very easily die. At least the guy had hair, man. I'm like bald. Guy's got some nice hair for that age. Yes. But you know, the first thing I'd say, someone of that age, your life is pretty much over. Like my mom died at 62. I'm 62. My dad died at 70. So I'm 62. So the first thing is you realize, you know, that life is, you know, when you're young, you just think that life, you know, you're this eternal being, which is just so silly. But you think that way. You just feel like, you know, this is never all going to end, right? You just feel like an eternal creature. But it's just a delusion, because life, the years go fast. I mean, the years just go boom, 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 and like the last 40 years just went like a blink. I mean, it just goes so fast. So you start waking up to reality. And reality is that your hopes and dreams are not going to come true, possibly. And most people don't know how to make their hopes and dreams come true. And by then they've lost so many hopes and dreams, and like I've had so many bad things happen to me. You just never see this stuff coming either, you know? You have no clue that life can turn as bad as it can get. Like I had 2 homes, and right now I'm living in this dump. I had 2 beautiful homes, and now I'm living in this dump. So I can see, you know, how life can turn, you know. Because what happened to me is my health just had some health problems, and somehow it manifested in both me and my two sisters. My older sister started with lupus, and now they say she has chronic arthritis, and she's in like 3rd stage kidney failure. Younger sister has fibromyalgia, and all I've ever manifested with is like chronic fatigue. So we all have like autoimmune disorders, and I had fatigue so bad I just couldn't work for quite a few years. I couldn't put it together. And you know, your energy level as you get older, you just don't have the energy level to run and accomplish. Without energy, you can't get a hold of life. You can't produce, you know. You can't produce your dreams. You can't manifest your things that you want. And then you start losing hope, you know. You just you just start losing. You can lose hope. Now I don't. Now I'm a Christian, so you know, even though these bad things happen to me, I really understand why bad things happen, and you can turn things around as a Christian. But someone that's not a Christian, they don't have a clue why bad things happen. You know, a Christian knows that you kind of make your own destiny. Like in Joshua chapter 1, it says, meditate on God's word night and day, then you shall be successful. And God says he will never fail thee nor forsake thee. Like for example, if you look at Israel in the Bible, they went through some horrible times, from even present day times where Israel went through the Holocaust. I mean, you would think that God's chosen people wouldn't go through such horrible things. They were in Babylon. After they rejected Christ, and their entire temple was just utterly destroyed. Everything in Jerusalem was just destroyed. So you're talking about a nation that's been beat down 100,000 times, but now look, they're back. They're back in their own country again, and they're starting to rebuild after 2,000 years of destruction. And see, that's humanity. God in the Bible says, he says, oh, that there was a heart in them, that they would fear me and keep my commandments always. See, it's your spiritual DNA. It's your DNA that Satan wants to try to change, because you're going to produce whatever you are. Like Jesus says, abide in me. If a person abides in God and in his word, and he says, if you love me, you'll love my word. If you abide in that, then evil can't touch you. It's not going to touch you. Now you might say, well, look at Job, it touched him, but that's not true, because God was actually perfecting Job. Job manifested fear, and that fear attributed evil toward God, because he was seeing God as evil. And God wanted to make Job more perfect. And that's kind of why the bad things happened, because Satan had legal right based on his fear that started to overwhelm him and fill him. He said, the thing that I feared came upon me. Of course it did, because fear is a spirit. It's an evil spirit. And Satan's always trying to sneak in, and you might think of fear is a feeling, but then it can manifest into a word or a reality. That's why it says meditate on God's word night and day, because then that pushes fear out. It just like Mary was the vehicle or the vessel for God's word, who manifested into Jesus. We're supposed to be the bride of Christ and manifest Christ. Now, you can be the bride of Satan and manifest Satan, just like Job allowed fear to enter into him. And he said, the thing that I feared came upon me. If you manifest that spirit, then it enters into you, then, well, you're the bride of it. And that's how spiritual things work. And someone like this that didn't have God, of course, has hopelessness. And he's going to manifest that. And I can see someone of that age, the same age as me, if they didn't have any hope in God, that they could just feel powerless to change their life, and they feel like hope is gone. They would feel like hope is over. There's no, and then they just want to destroy themselves. And even the statement of his death. Because when you're in this state, you feel like, I guess someone like him I would see as someone that's like invisible. He's in the world, but it's like he's not there. No one cares that he exists, right? So in a sense, his death and this big explosion is a statement. It's a statement that it's almost like a statement, a manifest statement or a message that I was here. And that actually is going to make people focus on him, that he was here, that he was a person, that he was in the midst of us all. So the motive, in a sense, to someone who's in the world that feels like their hopes and dreams that no one helped him manifest, or he probably had little family connections, close family connections. He just started feeling invisible, and in a sense, the explosion, dying in that way, is like almost like a statement saying, I was here, but you didn't see me. Remember in the Bible, Jesus says, Jesus makes this statement. He says, I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. I was in prison and you didn't come unto me. So someone like this man here is feeling invisible, that no one cares, right? No one gives a damn. You see people, for example, we're supposed to be the greatest country in the world, but in Washington, D.C., you'll see people just walk right past the homeless like they're garbage or rats or trash. A nuisance. And Jesus said, he said, I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. I was a stranger and you didn't acknowledge me. You didn't come unto me. So this person, when they get in that state, you realize that there's no one that really cares, because I've been in that place, I've been in that place when I was sick and I couldn't work, and my family turned their backs on me, and they had their own problems. Everybody has their own problems, especially, that's life, and everyone feels, a lot of people feel overwhelmed and they feel like they can't share because they just feel like they're on their edge themselves. No one ever feels like they're manifesting the really happiness and the blessedness that they really have enough to really share, right? No one ever really feels that way, They never feel like enough is enough. And especially when it comes to a thing called time, you just, you do the 9-to-5 job, and you come home, you take, you eat, you fall asleep watching TV, then you get up and you do it all over again. You're like a zombie, like The Walking Dead, And your years just pass by and by, and there's so little time, to hang out with friends like you did when you were a kid, and you just enjoy those times of what life's all about, is, hanging around with people and sharing your life, and, and different things. That time gets smaller and smaller as you try to possess the things you think you want, like money and material things. Then those material things you have, like the more cars you have or the more houses you have, you end up taking care of them and they own you instead of you really owning them. You have to take care of all this stuff, and all your time is spent taking care of all this stuff. So life is just, I don't want to be too negative about anything about life, but unless you're an expert at managing your time and knowing exactly how you're managing life, most people aren't going to be real happy. And then it's hard to find other people that can manage their time that you can hang around with in the first place to even feel like you're sharing life with people. And then people have their own little families nowadays. We used to have America used to have the extended families and families build into families in one home, where everybody, you needed people together to support each other and to help. Now it's the individual families. Like you'll see, like one of the guys I work with, his family, they all moved to different parts of the country, and they couldn't even get together for Christmas. The family's just broken down, and everyone's too busy and just trying to build their own little house and have their own little house, and everyone's separated and everyone's busy and everyone's kind of selfish with their time and their money, and we become little individual cells instead of a part of a community, like like it used to be. But one thing you'll notice in the poorer communities, that everyone's just socializing and having fun. They're not working, but they're staying up all night having fun and being together, and they might be on food stamps, but it's interesting between the successful. It's like this guy Roger Elliott that committed suicide. I see a disconnect between him and his father. Like his father was successful in Hollywood or something or other, I believe. I forget exactly what he was. But there's a disconnect between the parent and the kid, I remember watching this one episode on, I think it was on PBS, where these two girls joined their family in an old-time farm community where they had to like raise their own food and see if they could survive. So they had no electricity, and the two daughters that worked all day long with their dad out in the field, they felt such a purpose, such a connection to their father, such a love. He had time to be with them even though they were working, trying to just see if they could survive, like one of the old families did. It was like an experiment. And then when they went back to their own life, he went back to his business, and there was a separation between the kids and the family. And the daughters, even though they had he was a very rich man, even though they had a jacuzzi and all these nice things, video games and computers, and there was a disconnect between them, So you see Roger Elliott, which was the Vista shooter, who went and shot a bunch of girls because they wouldn't have sex with him. You see a disconnect between him and his father, that time that they spend together. So there's a disconnect in this country, with people where we're all these individual cells. So someone like this, in this day and in this time, just to get inside this guy's head, would be someone that just feels alone, invisible, that no one gives a damn about. So him blowing himself up and then playing the song Downtown, see, that's a very old song, which probably reminded him of a time when, for example, when I grew up, the neighborhood I grew up in it was such a family. The entire neighborhood, we were a community. We really were. It was one of the most amazing, magical times. Like all the widows, there were all these widows where the husbands had died in the neighborhood, but to me, they were like all my grandmothers. Even though my parents had me late in life, and most of my grandparents died before I was 8 years old. I only had one grandmother. All the others had died because my parents had us kind of later in life. But all the widows in the neighborhood were my grandmothers. Most of them were my grandmothers. And I never even thought of it until later in life, but they were all like grandmothers to me. And even the mothers of my friends would be like secondary mothers to me, just like my mother was my mother. They would be motherly to me. So it was a very interesting community, and we'd all go over to this one house and we'll play ball and basketball and frisbee, and We would just play all day long until it was time to go to bed. It was the most magical, fun time. I did not want to grow up. And then all of these things just started breaking down once I hit about 18, 19 years old. We all started to separate, and it was never the same ever again. And it never came back. And I was so used to having friends, it's like I didn't know how to really go out and make friends. I mean, and then later in life, as I am now, I know how to go out and make friends and be around people, but I don't have time now. But that's another story. But I can see someone like this playing that song downtown because that probably brought him back to a time in his childhood when he had his parents. You know, when you lose your parents, you lose a foundation that, you know, as I think, see, I lost my parents a long time ago because they had us later in life. But your parents represents two people that care about you, that give you unconditional love. So I would think him playing that song downtown would remember of a time where he was a kid, you know, because people like value kids. It's like you're so valued as a child. You're treated so special. So that song downtown probably reminded him of a time when he wasn't invisible. And his parents loved him. That the foundation of your parents, that love, that unconditional love, even though they might not treat you like my sisters. My sisters don't have a good memory of my mother, but mother was a good person. She would give us the best Christmases. You know, she wasn't a very happy person because her health started fading as due to an autoimmune disorder of diabetes. But she had a lot of bad times. But she kind of treated some of my sisters kind of bad, and even me bad. But I could see the good also when after she woke up in the morning and got her shot because she was diabetic. She was hell before she got her shot. But once she got her coffee and her breakfast in her, then she transformed and she wasn't a monster. Hate to say that about my mom, but there was a good person there at the core. Once she got that shot in her and everything. But she wasn't that way until she got the diabetes, and depression I think just creeped in on her, and it can happen, you know, people get in ruts, and the older you get, the more you start understanding stuff of this nature. But I probably played that song because it was probably it was a good memory of a total transformation of a different time, just like it was for me when I grew up in the childhood time when I had this huge extended family. Everybody in the neighborhood was like my grandmother, and then all the friends that I played with, their mothers was like my mother, and all of that's gone. All of that just vanished, you know, almost like a dream, and it's all gone. And all of a sudden, then your parents, the foundation of your parents die. Then all of that is obliterated. All that extended family is just like gone. And then if you don't form new relationships, like I never got married. Probably this guy probably didn't have a wife. I don't really know for sure, but I can see the loneliness and the hopelessness of when you get older. Your dreams, you don't have hope as far as, you know, marrying that dream girl, or you know, your career's pretty well winded down at 63. If you're not rich then I don't know if this guy lived in this mobile home or what the deal was, or if his finances were falling apart. But I'm sure it'd be a combination of all these things. And a younger person wouldn't understand stuff of this nature. But I would say the guy died because of loneliness. Just probably felt like no one cared, and probably the explosion was just a way of saying, I mean, at least he warned people to get away. So the explosion is almost like a statement, a message saying, I was here, take notice of me. And you know, that's what I'm kind of seeing as I try to get inside this guy's head, and see that if you don't feel like there's a God that cares about you, like I know that God exists. I haven't been that close to him in the last 40 years, but I've seen Jesus Christ in a vision. And believe it or not, he looked very similar to, it was about 40 years ago, I seen Jesus in a vision, and he looked very similar to the Shroud of Turin. Let's see if we can find it here. I mean, I seen it 40 years ago. But see, sometimes things like this make a difference, even though your life fell to pieces. Shroud of Turin. See, I still have hope. They made a 3D image of the Shroud of Turin. See that right there?
Identical to the...
See that face right there? This was 30 years before I ever even knew about the Shroud of Turin. When I saw the vision of Jesus, he looked just very similar to this in the vision I saw. And I never saw this till 30 years later. And then another 10 years later, then they made this image from the shroud. But that's the face I saw. Except his eyes were open. That is the face I saw. Now, I don't know if the shroud's real or not. All I know is what I saw 40 years ago. And I never even knew the shroud existed till about 30 years ago. But being a Christian is really what gave me hope. And I was going to write some books. I still might write like 100 some books. And see, Satan will beat you down. Here's a song that was played. I'm not going to play it, but it's called Downtown. I remember that song when I was a kid. But that's what I'm seeing in a part of someone that's of this age. And I don't know anything about his personal life. But that's the motive I see. Hopelessness, feeling invisible, that no one cares. So and then you find out, like I said, you find out in life that no one really cares. Once you lose that foundation of your parents, like I went through some hard times, some real hard times where I almost ended up homeless. And found out that even though I had sisters, I found out that they didn't care. That one of them almost let me move in, which was almost a good thing that I didn't move in with her. Because she actually started to turn into the monster that she hated. She hated she resented my mom. She didn't hate her. She resented her, which is a different thing. Because my mom turned a monster, but she started to turn into that very monster and manifest that toward me. If I'd have moved in with her, she would have manifested that. It's very interesting. It's interesting how abusers, whether it's an alcoholic that beats his kids, how a kid can turn into the alcoholic that then beats their kid. It's interesting how that my sister and even myself, you manifest what your you have that spiritual mental DNA of your parent that can dominate you, and it's in your subconscious that you're not even really aware of, but it manifests under certain circumstances. So that's what I see if I look at someone of this guy's age. Number one, his hopes and dreams are, if you haven't done it by the time you're 62, if you haven't figured out how to control life, then it really starts dominating you. Because it's a very powerful spiritual thing. Men are not prisoners of fate, but prisoners of their own mind. And this guy was in his own prison. And for 62 years, he probably tried to manifest the happiness that he wanted. And then finally he just realized that he wasn't going to manifest it, and that hope was gone. And once hope is gone, then there's, once hope is gone, then suicidal thoughts just rush in. And for me, I've always had hope in God, and it's like an anchor for a boat that this guy didn't have. And but life, especially in this day and time, it's a different time. It's a different time. Like I said, the American family are individual cells. It's not a community anymore. It's every man for himself. It's the me generation. And people can feel invisible in this time, and then feel like no one cares. I mean, just work itself, like the place I'm working right now. I mean, they're cheating me half to death. They treat me like a slave, and they would. I don't want to get into details, but it's a form of slavery where I work. I mean, I'm not going to say where I work, but the guy even risked my life and didn't give a damn. One of the presidents of the company. I mean, he literally tried to put me in a life situation, and I stood up for myself, and he could have fired me, but he didn't. But he tried to put me in a situation where I could have been killed. But I stood my ground, and luckily he backed down. They don't give a damn. I mean, they just don't even give a damn. And it's just the way it is, about our country. People don't give a damn about people anymore. We were talking about that, how companies used to give big Christmas bonuses, and stuff, but not nowadays. Like the company I work at, which I work for a company within a company, but even the company itself didn't give even any Christmas bonuses to their people this year. And even our government. wants to give us a stingy little $600 after all this COVID stuff. It's just they don't give a damn about the American people, you know. You know, America was rooted on that. A lot of it was rooted in, you know, we enslaved the black man and killed the Indian, and you know, you reap what you sow. A country reaps what it sows, and it's really reaping a lot of the stuff it sowed. But anyway, I'm supposed to be sleeping right now. But that's what I see when I look at this, someone that's close to my age. But I could see how suicidal thoughts could creep into somebody around my age that, because it's a cold world out there. People just don't care. And you know, I thought the Christians, you know, I turned to many of the well-known Christians back in the day. When things fell apart for me back in 2008, that's when things turned for me really bad. And I always thought the Christian community out there would be like a lifeline, but it wasn't. You know, they didn't give a damn. It's amazing how they don't care, but they just didn't. Just didn't care. I always thought that there were people out there that cared, at least in the Christian community, but it's not there. People would even block me on Twitter as I'd cry out. You know, just you see in the Bible where the blind man was crying out, "Thou son of David, help me!" And the disciples were sitting there telling him to hold his peace or to shut up. But Jesus wasn't like them, and he went to the blind man and healed him, whereas the disciples were just sitting there telling him to hold his peace or just shut up. See, that's the church. We're all evil. That's why Jesus said that we're all evil, and we all are. So this man living in an evil world, you know, not being able to manifest or hold on to God, you know, without that hope, then where else is he? But in this world that's evil. So him doing something like this really is just a statement of the motive would be the hopelessness of life. It's just a manifestation of this atmospheric reality of this country, of this state that we're in, the atmosphere. You know, if you seed rain clouds, well, it'll rain, right? Well, a manifestation of what this guy's doing right here is just a manifestation of the atmosphere in which we're producing in this country. You know, just attacking Donald Trump. The news used to be like Switzerland. They used to be like very they didn't pick sides, but now the news just like a nasty creature of the Nile. They just pick a side, and then they grab an arm and try to rip it off, just like an alligator that grabs an arm and tries to twist it. They've been trying to destroy Donald Trump like no president I've ever seen. Just trying to rip him to pieces. And if they could, they would. So it's just such a nasty world that we live in right now. You know, in a lot of ways. And if you can't keep your mind free of that stuff, I mean, there's a lot of people that just falling into depression, and a lot of suicides happening now, and so this kind of stuff's going to manifest because we're in a very evil time, very, very evil time of this country. So at least this guy warned people to get out of the way. So. But that's what I see when I look at this man. That's the motive. That's the reason. So the reason basically is his hopes and dreams. It feels like life's over. He's powerless to control his destiny. He's lost all hope. People are cold and selfish and hateful, and they don't care, and that's a fact. And I mean, even the Christians don't care. And then Jesus said, he said, I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. I was a stranger and you didn't care, acknowledge me. I was in prison. You didn't. You know, this guy wasn't in a physical prison, but he was in a prison of loneliness, probably. So he had no reason. That's why I think he probably had attention deficit disorder also. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. I mean, look, I don't know if this picture is a recent picture, but I don't know. I'm sure there's other reasons manifested in his DNA, in his mental / spiritual DNA. It looks like he was probably a good-looking man. Probably had life easy in some ways. Probably always had a girlfriend or a wife. I don't know. Maybe he had a lonely Christmas also. He never experienced anything with that type of loneliness. I don't know. Anyway, that's just what I think. I know nothing about the guy, so loneliness is a powerful thing. Hopelessness. So that's what I say his motive is. It's just a statement that blowing himself up is just a statement of saying, hey, I was here. Acknowledge me. If you thought I was invisible before, now at least now I'm not invisible. You're gonna at least know my name, and at least have thoughts about me where before you didn't even think about me. It's as if I never exist. It was as if he didn't exist on this world. Is what I think I see. Is the way he felt. Felt like he was invisible. And this is a way of not being invisible. Going out this way. It's like having that ray of attention that even though he's dead and he's not really going to ever experience it, at least in his own delusional mind, he knew that people were going to be focused on him, and a great number of people were going to be giving him attention, even though he knew that would happen, but even though he would never be alive to experience it, he knew that he had the false illusion of it manifesting, and to him it was a reality. Even though it wouldn't happen till after he was dead, to him it was real then, finally. And I think that's why he did what he did. To have that reality that people did see him and think about him, whereas everyone viewed him as invisible. So just having that false illusion of knowing that people would focus on him, even though he's dead, and At least I gave him a false illusion. That's what I think. Anyway.